this edition of Connect, we talk with Tim McClain, employment counselor from Marin Employment Connection. We'll get his insight about finding a job in this job market.
My name is Tim McClain. I'm an employment counselor with the Marin Employment Connection. We've been described in some places as the emergency room for the economy. And to some degree, I see my job as sort of the triage nurse. I see people first when they walk in. I don't have all the answers that they're looking for, but one of the things I can do is direct them to where they need help from a specialist. Looking for work by yourself is a theme that I come back to a lot. Right now there are about 10,000 people out of work in Marin County, and they're not all here. And I think one of the reasons is that people are kind of culturally told that you shouldn't look for work with help. You shouldn't ask for anybody's help. I tell people that that concept went out in the 1880s, that hasn't been something that any living person has done where they were being smart to do it. That it's since the frontier was settled in this country, essentially, in the United States, you want to call in every bet you've got when you're looking for work. You ask people that you don't think are going to even talk to you. You make calls where you think they're not going to be willing to pick up the phone and to even listen to you. You don't let no get in the way. You can sit in front of a computer for a long time and not make a lot of progress. And I think the difference between being around people and not can make a huge difference in job search. In many cases, people feel like they've figured out job search and they know what they're doing. And most of the time when they think they figured it out, they figured it out the way it was then, but over time, how you do job search changes. So for instance, a person who's used to putting a resume in an envelope may not get used to the idea about resumes now need to be emailed or go into an upload on the internet. Those kinds of things change, and people don't always keep up with that change. I think attitude plays a big part in a job search for people. If you want to impress an employment counselor, the best way to do it is to walk in and say, here are my top 3 job goals and I have resumes for all 3. That's a level of preparation that's very rare, but it's impressive when you see it. The flip side of that is folks that come in and kind of just don't want to play, and they have issues about, I don't want to do this, and that kind of attitude, or the employers aren't treating me well, or my last employer didn't treat me well. That can really hurt your chances. And I tell people you don't have to say a word to blow an interview. All you have to do is the employer says, well, tell me about your last job, and you do this. I said, that's an interview killer. You don't have to say a single word. If you just give away facially that you didn't like your last job, the employer is going to think that's what you're going to say about them. I'm actually seeing a really interesting shift right now from people saying, I need a job, which I think is kind of like me walking up to a salesperson at Nordstrom and they say, I need to make a sale. It's like, that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I came in to buy something from you. How can you help me? And I think people are actually beginning to see a lot more, at least the ones I'm seeing, are seeing that it's helping the employer solve problems that gets them employed. And it's, how can I help you? And how can I take a little of the extra load off of you? I think that makes more sense. There's actually 2 different parts of what we do. There's the job, which is there's an immediate need and something I need to do right now. And then there's career, which is longer term and is geared towards more I need to do some long-term planning, or I'm going to move from one job to another, and that's how I will transition. Most transitions in terms of career have to do with retraining, gaining skills, looking at different kinds of jobs. That's a big change to make. One of the better writers on the subject, Marin Employment did a piece about making a career change fast. And fast in his world is something in the order of 6 months to a year. I see people that are thinking that a career transition is possible within, a few weeks. And that's a very rare thing. Losing a job can be an incredibly traumatic experience. People go through a lot of changes around losing a job, and sometimes they feel really uncomfortable about talking to people about it. It's partly being willing to get past that and say, I'm going to call in all my bets. And I think in a lot of ways what we're doing is we're helping them play a game a little better. The game of looking for work is different from the game of working. And I think for some people, they don't necessarily see it as a separate skill set, and so they don't go looking for help. And in many cases, I think that's a mistake. Employers right now are going through a rough time where they can't always know what the future holds. And so I'm asking people that are looking for work to be a little understanding that somebody offers you a job and the bookkeeper comes in and says, we can't afford to hire the person, and they suddenly withdraw. It's not about you. And I'm also asking employers when I talk to them to understand that when somebody's going through a whole lot of other changes and they didn't show up for work when you thought, that's because this is such a remarkable time. There's one other thing in this last downturn that I think is really remarkable. People are cold calling employers to look for work. And I had a person in a workshop not too long ago, he said about every third person that I talk to is wishing me luck in my job search. And I think that's because there's nobody that has been unaffected by this. Anybody can come here. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you're signed up with another agency somewhere else. You could be fully employed. I like to say that George Lucas could come in here and use the resources if he wanted to. I think a lot of people come here with the idea that we do placement, direct placement for everybody that walks in, and that's not true. What happens is that many people come in and they just need some resources to look for work and a way to play the game a little better to up the chances that they're getting hired. Those kinds of things, I think, work for almost everybody we see. There are some people who look and look and look and can't find work, and they have a heck of a time. And in those cases, it may be that we need to bring in other resources and other people who will sit down with them. But placement is usually not a necessary thing for somebody looking for work. It is in cases where everything else has failed. And we usually try the things that we think are going to work first and give you the most autonomy as a job seeker. And then if we feel that none of that's working, then we go to Plan B, which would be placement. One of the things I really like about our staff is they see possibilities in people and they help them see them themselves. And I think that that's not quite placement, but there's this sort of an in-between area where we didn't exactly place you, but we really gave you some good ideas about how to look and what to look for, or we saw a job that you'd never even thought of doing before. That can be very helpful too.
The Marin Employment Connection offers a range of services for job seekers and employers looking for workers. They offer job search workshops and employment counselors to help. Thanks for watching Connect. I'm Sue Hernandez, reminding you to listen with all your senses, know your communities, and connect.